what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, I was jealous of you this weekend. Not gonna lie, man. You got a little summertime shy. You went to my favorite places and ate my favorite things.
Yes. It's so funny, kind of like our, relationship as friends and coworkers, because you went from Chicago and moved to SEC country, as they say. I've gotten to do all these really cool SEC projects. And for the first time, I was able to, go to Chicago, go to Wrigley Field with my job. And funny enough, the last time I went to Chicago was to go interview Leonard Fournette. When he was at the Rivals camp. That's how long ago that was, when he was in recruiting, back when they had Team Tumblr and stuff, like when they were trying to figure out that acquisition. That's over 10 years ago. But when I was at Soldier Field, so I'd never been to Wrigley Field. So I say this to say, for my day job on Ion, we had the first women's sporting event at Wrigley Field since 1943. And you're talking about League of Our Own. It had been that long since a women's sporting event had happened at Wrigley Field. We got to put that on. It was super duper cool, as part of the kind of live coverage on the social side. So just super duper cool to talk to these players, talk to the people that are from Chicago. And I shout out Connor for being super helpful, because obviously I've always heard the stories of Wrigley Field, but it delivered, man. There are people who hate popular things, right? I am fully on board with Wrigley Field lives up to the hype. The people are so nice. The ability, the fact of because I realize there's a specific kind of person, and of which you are one, who is from Chicago, that is the sweet spot of they are polite, but they don't really they're not overbearing, And you go up to the Northeast, and I love the Northeast. I love Philly. I love New York. I love all that. But they are they don't really care. So they're just doing their thing. They're kind of rude, whatever. And that's cool. And people from there are proud of that. And in the South, they care, but they're can be a little bit overbearing, a little bit too involved in your personal business. The people in Chicago will be just as involved to keep you comfortable, and then just keep it pushing. They care about you. They'll ask you real questions. I had such great conversations with the guys who are these old school union guys who were running the set, talking about where you're from, ribbing me. I've never felt so welcomed in a place that's not part of the South that I didn't have some connection to, because I can walk in most places in the South, talk about college football, get an audience pretty quickly, but to have no really connection other than, hey, I'm friends with Connor and he told me Wrigley is cool, and to be so accepted by a city, you guys, there's something going on there in Chicago. It's a super cool place.
Heard it here first, Chicago. Super cool place. Let us be the first to tell you. Yeah, look, I don't need to share my love with Wrigley anymore than I already do. It's a very, very special place, and just a unique atmosphere. I know it's gotten a lot more commercialized in the last few years with some of the stuff that they've done around the stadium and all that stuff as well. But a unique experience, and one that I recommend to anyone if they can get it. I need an honest review, and you will not hurt my feelings in the slightest if you tell me that my favorite food of all time, Lou Malnati's deep dish pizza, I'm a sausage and mushroom guy, I'm in that setting. You will not hurt my feelings if you tell me this was too overbearing. We had to wait too long. I know you got there super late. That could have played a part. Give me your honest, unfiltered opinion of your first Lou Malnati's experience.
So the only negative I have of it is that we rented a car because we're sickos, and driving and parking in Chicago is nuts. Oh, yeah. That was the only bad part of it, was getting parking, putting on the flashers, trying to move around and not get arrested, just circling the block when we drop someone off. But yeah, I mean, the Chicago deep dish, man, it really is the only thing I can say, to be honest. It's like a pie. There's multi levels to it. So if you're expecting a pizza that you can pick up and eat, it's not that. But if you're expecting a meat pie, it is an incredible meat pie. It's got many layers to it. Each layer is delicious. The cheese is very stringy and full. We got a large, and we ate maybe half of it between three of us, because we thought we did the classic, we'll be able to crush one of these. We had one piece each. We were we're done. We're full. Sleep time.
It is a different food entirely from thin crust. And Chicago thin crust is actually the more you have Chicago thin crust growing up in that area more than you actually do Chicago deep dish. That's what people on the outside don't always fully realize. And Chicago thin crust is phenomenal. I always tell
you
people,
can't eat one of those more than a couple times a month. I mean,
yeah.
that was an experience.
No, Lou Malnati's is holiday food. We have it on Christmas Eve in my household. We would have it on my birthday, and then like maybe my mom's birthday and my brother's birthday. It's like a 3 times a year type food. Whereas if you're ordering from a place like Rosati's or Nino's or Barnaby's or something like that, I know I'm talking real into the weeds here with Chicago pizza, but if you're having a place like that, the Chicago Tavern thin crust, that's a different story. But I always tell people it's so stupid that we compare thin crust to thick crust because it's a different food. It's an entirely different food. It's a different experience. If I would actually be more comfortable if we compared Detroit style to Chicago style, because that's got a little bit like more, the thickness is kind of similar. Now we're just dudes talking pizza right now. But I love it for what it is. And I love New York style pizza. Like I love thin crust as well. Each has their place. I grew up, with deep dish being very special. And because of probably when I had it, it's even more special. But I'm relieved to hear that you weren't like, oh man, too many tomatoes. Sausage patty? Nah, just not really. You know what? Just the cheese, wasn't really a fan. Overhyped, overrated. That's all I needed. That does make me feel better, but you would not have hurt my feelings if you had said that.
Yeah, like you said, it's not for everybody. It's an experience. And I think that, we got to have the ballpark Franks at Wrigley. So I think we were able to do a little bit of everything and really just button it up. But listen,
Love it.
I'm a big lad. So if a food being too much is never going to stop me. I'm a gumbo enjoyer.
That's right, man. That's right. We got a great show coming up today. JD PicKell, he's going to join us in a bit. Fun conversation with him. Talk about a lot of different things. His career. We talk about Bama's recruiting efforts lately, talk about Texas and Texas A&M, this rivalry coming back, a whole bunch more with him. But first, this is something that I want to do for a couple of weeks now, Will. This is the Lost College. Oh, by the way, we got Lad of the Week coming up as well. We have the Lost College football seasons that I want back. And let me clarify what I mean by that. I wasn't in a coma in 2006 or something like that. Don't take it that way. We found out, what was this, I think it was the 1st of June, that the United States Department of Justice announced that it's trying to get the NCAA to retroactively give back a year of eligibility for anyone who was forced to redshirt because of the transfer rule. Still needs court approval, so we're still figuring out what this is going to look like. But remember the time in which guys actually had to sit a year after transferring as undergrads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very recently, was not that long ago, pre-2021, and 2020 was a free year of eligibility, so a little bit messy, but we used to have these crazy waiver requests, and the NCAA admitted that it couldn't process all of these requests. So you know what the NCAA did? They said, screw it, we're just going to let all undergrads transfer without penalty one time. That's
the
what
purge.
Oh man, we're going to have this is less craziness than the waiver process. And we are not an organization that can handle any of this stuff. And then it got even crazier after that. That's kind of the irony. But this proposed decree, yes, decree. Whenever we get a chance to say a proposed decree, we say it on these airwaves. It would only go back to the 2019-2020 school year if it's approved. But we could see some active players get a year of eligibility back, one of which being Cam Rising. Cam Rising,
our guy.
Man, look, I didn't think I could be any more of a Cam Rising guy. If he finds a way to finagle this system to be able to play into what would be considered the latter half of his 20s, that's an opportunity that we as college football fans need to embrace with open arms. We just do. He redshirted at Utah in 2019. That was after he transferred from Texas. So that's at a time where if you're an undergrad, you're still sitting out that year. And if he plays football in 2025, because remember, he's got his 1 year of eligibility left this year as it stands. He's got medical red shirts and all that stuff because season-ending injuries. He didn't play at all last year. But if he plays in 2025, he will be 26 years old. You guys thought Stetson Bennett was old? This guy would be 26. And
it's a 90s birthday in 2026.
Right? How many 90s birthdays do we even have in the NFL? A lot. But you get what I'm saying. He would be at a place where, let's say he goes into the NFL draft and, he signs his paperwork and stuff like that. he does that in the 2026 NFL draft. He would be getting to his team at age 27 with an early May birthday.
Yep.
Didn't do the baseball thing or anything like that. Didn't decide, oh, I'm going to come back and play this sport. No. This man has just been in college football that long. I need to see that. That would be just unbelievable. But today's discussion, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the lost seasons that date back well before 2019, 2020. Okay, so we're talking about this in a historical sense. The guys who transferred during their college careers, who missed out on a year of college football during what was probably their athletic prime. And this is the NCAA mandated redshirt seasons for transfers that I want back. And I've always hated this rule. I've been vocal about it because while I understand we want to make it difficult for guys to go from team to team, they weren't employees. And that is what is being ruled now. And they're trying to figure that out. You did this when you didn't have the power to do this. This was messed up. This is why we're going to give you this back. They had year-to-year scholarships. They didn't even have NIL. Well, they didn't even have NIL. And they were still able to enforce this. That's kind of how we're going to look at this NCAA era of college football and realize how messed up it was at certain points. But yeah, I mean, look, they just I approach this differently than probably most people listening to this. Okay, I'm explaining that. I am of the mindset as someone who sits at home and watches college football every Saturday. I want to see good players play football. That's my goal. That's my mindset. So a rule that doesn't allow for that to happen is a rule that I don't like. Okay, normal. I think that's okay. Coaches, they leave, they get fired. That could drastically change one's outlook on transfers and how they're able to like work their way up the depth chart. I know that purists always say, oh, kids don't want to work. They don't want to work their way up the depth chart. There's more to it than that. There's always more to it than that. Anyway, these are the seasons that I want back. And we're talking strictly about transfers who missed a year of their athletic prime because the NCAA said so. And we're going to stick to the 21st century because if I truly want one of these seasons back, it's got to be a season that I have a pretty good recollection of. Okay, I can't go all the way back to like a Randy Moss, a Scott Frost. I can't pretend, oh man, 1996, I would have loved to have been able to watch this. But yeah, I will just stick to kind of 21st century things that I can actually remember. And I also think one last thing, and I'll kick it to you. I think it's worth mentioning the guys who wanted to play somewhere after transferring, but they went the JUCO route, right? So that used to be a way to kind of a loophole around the system, even as recently as Jarrett Stidham leaving Baylor to be able to play JUCO, and then he goes to Auburn. But that used to be a very popular thing. Those guys are worth including because if they had current rules, they would absolutely be playing at big-time schools instead of East Mississippi. Okay, so they're going to be part of this discussion as well. That's part of the lost season discussion. Does this exercise of basically college football fan fiction make sense?
Yes. And I'm debating where to add this point because I'm actually reading the document today, and the first guy is a great point to make here. So I'll just let you start with the first guy, and then I'll make my point.
Okay. There's a reason why I included the JUCO distinction here because 2009 Cam Newton, that's the one that I immediately think of. I want the Blinn College season back. Okay. With all due respect to the fine folks at Blinn College, I want that back. And don't tell me that Cam wouldn't have been able to play anywhere because he stole laptops and he may or may not have had some academic issues and he tried to throw the laptops out the window. It was a pretty bad attempt at being able to rid yourself of whatever you were guilty of that they were trying to find you guilty of.
He did not come to play school at that point. He was not using his UF education there.
Nah, he wasn't. At that point, we could say that with certainty. His sweepstakes after 2009 would have been insane. Okay. And he didn't have his stock improve just because he wrecked dudes at the JUCO level in 2009. Okay. Remember what Dan Mullen said on this show. After Tebow won the Heisman, Dan Mullen tells Urban that going into 2008, Cam is the best quarterback on the team and that he was definitely the most talented, which set off Urban. Urban was like, how could you say that about Tebow? And he's like, no, this Cam Newton cat, he's pretty freaking good. Yep. So that was established well before. The greatest tragedy of Cam's career in college is that we only got one real season of it.
Yep.
That's it. And that's a bummer. If he had been eligible to play immediately somewhere else after getting kicked out of Florida, he could have immediately gone to Mississippi State. He could have played with Dan Mullen, and it would have been on. It would have been awesome. And I mean, no disrespect to the quarterbacks in that room, but Mississippi State went 5-7 that first year with Dan Mullen.
Yep.
You don't think Cam would have changed that?
A little bit.
And I suppose he could have gone to Auburn a year earlier. Auburn fans, I hear you. I understand. I'm not trying to take Cam away from you. We remember, Chris Todd, not necessarily established just yet. So
yeah,
could have happened. But more than any other person on this list, and I'm not saying that I wanted him to go to Mississippi State to see what it would have been like with Mullen. I put him at Auburn for that extra year. That's fine. More than any other person on this list, Will, I want that lost year of Cam back, because that's a guy that we knew that his style was going to bring on a lot of contact. There was going to be a lot of wear and tear on him by the end of his career. And it frustrates me that some of that wear and tear was because he essentially had no option but to play in JUCO. I guess his option could have been, don't get in trouble at Florida, stay there, stick around.
But I love how that's, looking back at this through the context of Swamp Kings, I love how that's the guy they drew the line on, right? Where it's like, Cam, you stole a laptop, you're out of here. It's like, there were some bad dudes on that team. Let's get it like this. Like, did you murder someone? Well, that guy stayed on the team. So, like, that's kind of looking back at it. Like, yeah, I think that was just kind of the culture on those Urban Meyer teams, that everyone was just kind of doing a little bit of petty crime, and he just happened to be the one who got his head caught in the cookie jar, it seems like. So I'm not even going to see, that's, the takes change over the years, because now we understand the culture of that team. It's like, dude, if you weren't stealing something, you weren't Tim Tebow, what were you doing on that team?
Yeah, you were Tebow. That was basically it with those late 2000 Florida teams. So yeah, Cam would have just been so much fun to watch in any offense. I cannot emphasize this enough. Put him anywhere, and it would have been great to be able to see an extra season 2009.
Yeah, I mean, hey, to your point, we're not Blaine College disrespecters here. We're Birdman Anderson respecters, another Blaine College alum, right? But to your point, yeah, that's how I first learned about that, funny enough. But point being, like, in JUCO is a route for certain people, whatever, like that's always going to be the case. But to your point, if Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen are saying this guy is, at least in the conversation, even as a recruit, this is a guy who is seen, and it's got to be so frustrating from Cam and kind of his team that, he was this freak of nature. And that was back before social media, when you really didn't get video of the practices, and like you would just hear these whispers of a guy like this. It was like this secret weapon that Florida had, right? And it had to be so frustrating to kind of go through that process. And again, this is where I was going to say, like, being in Alabama, listening to Jocks 94.5 at the time, hearing all the, besmirching Cam's name, calling him Scam Newton, talking about pay for play. Cam Newton is the biggest case of culture shock I've ever seen. Because if you go back to 2009, 2010, this guy, they're talking about he's a criminal, or they'll even use the word thug back in that day, which we've now seen as kind of racially coded. They would talk about, well, this guy is doing pay for play. He's not in it for the right reasons. Well, now fast forward to today, there's no losing a year for transfers. There's no law against pay for play. You know what I'm saying? When's the apology going to come out to Cam Newton? Because, I mean, if you have an athlete that can change the face of a program the way that he did at Auburn, to when, their first, and they've been knocking at the door. It was that, it was 2004 with Tommy Tuberville, where they're undefeated. And it was like, they were not as good as that team was. I'm not taking away from them. Auburn was not the championship title town, right? This felt like completely changing the culture there. And to your point, yeah, it would have been nice to have, Gene Chizik, Gus Malzahn together with Cam Newton for an additional season. Now, if you're Cam Newton, it all worked out great. You know what I'm saying? If you're Auburn, you got a national championship. So it's hard to say, well, maybe he gets hurt in year one. Maybe the style of athlete you see in the SEC is going to hit you harder. Maybe you get, in trouble again being on a college for another year. You just never know. But at the same time, to your point, as college football fans, you never know. It would be nice to see. And I think that one thing you can say about Cam, that's a guy that I've always kind of defended and talked about, that he was maybe a little bit ahead of his time. Talk about the laptop again. You're not supposed to steal laptops. Outside of that, right? It's like the hatred for Cam in the NFL was all just kind of like, he likes to have fun. He likes to taunt a little bit. And if I was able to run NFL players over, I would do the same thing. Let's be honest, right? And so kind of the hatred for Cam Newton, I think, was started by he's Scam Newton. I mean, think about Harvey Updike saying they put a Scam Newton jersey on the Paul Bear Bryant statue. That was how he was introduced to the world. It was, hey, NFL fans, here's this criminal who got kicked out of Florida, who asked for pay for play. Now you're going to take him first overall, and he runs this spread offense with Gus Malzahn, and it'll never work. So it's not about that it worked out for Cam. It was that he had to overcome so many things that just would not be a problem today. And he would not be viewed as this bad person because most of that stuff those opinions were formed by rules that no longer exist anymore.
Even if you told me, Will, that Cam would have had some things to figure out that first year, maybe like nobody ever praises Cam for his maturity to kind of handle all that stuff in 2010 and to just kind of shake it off. And, is he going to be able to play in the ICC championship? What's this all going to look like? And, maybe he's not as mature in 2009 or he's still figuring some of that stuff out. Even if you just tell me that it's 2018 Joe Burrow, right?
Yeah.
His first year at LSU. Even if you tell me it's a guy that's going to be that good, where, maybe he's not quite the Cam Newton that we came to know in 2010, but, he still ends up being one of the better quarterbacks in the conference. Cam would have still given us some of those moments.
Those traits are a lot more transferable. Being a locomotive, I think you can just kind of do that,
True. Not as dependent as Joe Burrow was on the system change that ultimately unlocked the player that he became. But Cam 2009, give me that one back. That was the first one I thought of, and probably the main reason I wanted to be able to do this exercise and why I went down a rabbit hole for a lot of these guys. All right, another guy that's very popular in this conversation, but in a much, much different way as it relates to transfers and sitting out a year. 2014 Baker Mayfield, the Baker Mayfield rule, something that doesn't really get talked about a lot in college football. We forget about this with Baker because of how incredible of a college career he had. But after Baker played as a walk-on his true freshman season at Texas Tech 2013, he wasn't given a scholarship. He's like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go try and walk on at the place that I idolized growing up, Oklahoma. And he still has to sit out in 2014. And it was kind of an NCAA deal and kind of a Big 12 deal. If you go back and remember what came out of this entire weird story, they still made him sit out the 2014 season despite an appeal because the Big 12 rules at the time stated that any players that transfer within the conference have to sit out a year, even walk-ons. And then that created the Baker Mayfield rule, which went into effect in 2016. And that rule essentially was created by the Big 12 to allow walk-on transfers to be able to not lose a year of eligibility. They can play immediately. You don't necessarily have to worry about it. So I guess I shouldn't complain about it that much because we got this year tacked on to the end of his career in 2017 for a guy that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But it was worth mentioning here because you still had a 19-year-old Baker Mayfield being told, hey, you can't play football even as a walk-on. You're being told that you are not eligible to play football. And that's just such a weird thing to say about someone that wasn't in trouble necessarily and became one of the best quarterbacks of the 21st century.
Yeah, I mean, transferring as a walk-on is just nuts as a concept, right? Like, you're at Texas Tech, and it's like, hey, you might have a chance to be part of this team. And you're like, you know what? If I might have a chance to be part of this team, I might have a chance to be part of Oklahoma. And, like, that just goes to show the dog that he had in him. But to your point, yeah, it's just such a specific instance, and it ends up getting made up. So, yeah, that guy is – okay. ESPN named him as, like, the best college quarterback of the 2000s.
Bill Connolly did. Yep.
And I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but I did tend to overrate or underrate him a little bit. He really did change college football. I think this is a pretty good example of how.
2017 was special, man.
Yes.
It's so hard to, and I remember we talked about this a lot during that season, about how hard it was going to be for Baker with how established he was at that point of his career already. With the 2 seasons he had as a starter, there's a lot of drama over the Baker Mayfield rules, as a concept and what that all looked like. And by the time 2017 rolled around, they had the arrest video with him trying to flee the cops. And, that was just bananas to think about. And like how hard it was going to be for Baker to be able to show, he actually has a level that's even higher. And then he somehow did. And if you kind of go back and look at the history of the Heisman in the 21st century, when we've gotten away from it being a lifetime achievement award, Baker is actually kind of the exception to the rule, as weird as that played out. And that season was special. And I'm very grateful that we did eventually get that extra year tacked onto his career that allowed him to play in 2017. Gave us one of my favorite games that I've ever watched as a college football fan. That Rose Bowl against Georgia was incredible. It was unbelievable. So, yeah, Baker, though, being told at age 19 as a walk-on, no, you cannot play, just shows you how backwards this system was.
Yep.
Chad Kelly, 2014. Yeah, swag.
Swag Kelly.
Similar to Cam here in that this is a guy getting kicked off the team. I always forget he went crazy on the coaching staff during a spring game. That's awesome.
What a staff that must have been. Anyway.
Can you picture, like, I don't remember seeing video of this, of Chad Kelly. And this was, I guess, before the time where all these spring games are on TV and, you know, some sort of ESPN Plus situation or something like that. But if there's video out there of Swag Kelly just going nose to nose with Dabo, I need to see it in a spring game. That's unbelievable. So think about this. He gets kicked off of Clemson mid-April, and he ends up going to the original Last Chance U, East Mississippi. They win an NJCAA national title because, I mean, that's just the type of thing that Swag Kelly would win, of course. But if he could have been in that post-spring window, we always talk about how bad it is for the quarterback depth in that post-spring window. But if Swag at this time, let's just say this hypothetically existed, 2014, could have entered the post-spring window, oh my gosh, he would have had a frenzy. He went on a visit to Bama too. Early summer, he went on a visit to Bama. And because if you remember the time, Bama's trying to replace A.J. McCarron. They had the Jake Coker, Blake Sims battle. But Swag Kelly's going on a visit in June and would have been fascinating. Like, can you go back and just picture this for me? Lane Kiffin, Nick Saban, Swag Kelly. For sites like ours, for SaturdayNightStuff.com, my God, the content will. That would have just been a match made in heaven. If Swag Kelly at that stage of his life was going nuclear on Dabo Swinney in a spring game, the interactions with Lane would have just been, and Saban in the mix. I don't know that they would have survived that, but everything would have just been must-see TV with that trio if we had gotten Swag Kelly being able to play at Alabama in 2014.
Connor, do you remember who the offensive coordinator was for Clemson at that point in time?
2014 wasn't Tony Elliott. 2014 was Chad freaking Morris, wasn't it, Will?
Yes, it sure was, Connor. If you have a video, someone of Swag Kelly losing his stuff on Chad freaking Morris, please send it to us. Because, like, you look at that coaching staff, you got some dudes you don't want to yell at, right? You got Dabo, you got Venables. I feel like I could yell at Chad Morris. I actually don't really fault him for yelling at Chad Morris because there have been plenty of times we've both yelled at Chad Morris. So that does vindicate him in a way, does it not?
I think it kind of does.
He was right.
I think he would. There's probably a lot of moments in Chad Kelly's life that he'd like to have back. I don't know that if you like blowing up at Chad Morris, I don't know that that'd be one of them. I think maybe he'd look back at that 10 years later and say, you know what? Actually, I probably should have yelled even more. I knew what I was doing. He absolutely did not. I was being set up for failure. This was terrible. Man, I need that video. I want that.
Yeah. And I was looking, of course, for Billy, who wasn't there yet. But you know who else was there? Jeff Scott. Another guy worth yelling at. So you know what? I get it. Swag Kelly, there have been times that you have been, I mean, you know, a little bit too much. Maybe this was a little bit justified because I could see, you know, dealing with the Dabo stuff, the preachy stuff all day. And then you get in your meeting rooms and it's just Chad Morris hitting you with the oh shucks. And it's like, man, y'all got to pick a message here to get on. So yeah, I never want to condone any of this stuff, but yeah, the staffs he was on, or the staffs, because you talked about that. It's like, yeah, the Bama staff would have been crazy, but this Clemson staff was underratedly pretty wild too.
Yeah, we did ultimately. I mean, I shouldn't complain too much. We did ultimately get a very entertaining version of Swag Kelly at Ole Miss and the things that he did. So I am grateful for that. It's not so much of a lost season, but it's one that's worth putting on here because of the entertainment value that he provided on a weekly basis. And to think that that guy was like, no, I got to go the JUCO route. Who knows? Maybe the market wasn't quite as deep as I'm remembering it based on that visit and stuff like that. But still, at the same time, another year of Swag Kelly, I think we would have all definitely appreciated.
For sure. Yeah, he was an underratedly fun guy.
All right, well, a guy that you know very, very well. 2014, Alvin Kamara. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Alvin Kamara is the perfect example of why I have always advocated for loose transfer portal restrictions, or just loose transfer restrictions, I guess, if we're talking about a pre-2018 world. I, as a neutral party, want to see really good players play football. That's my goal. I enjoy that. Call me a sicko. There are purists who will tell you nobody wants to compete anymore. I get it. There's a little bit of truth in that. There definitely is. There are also guys who very quickly get on campus and realize, my word, I signed up to play in a backfield that has Derrick Henry and Kenyon Drake and TJ Yeldon. And that's probably not going to be the best thing for my career long term. And you could say these things about who you are as a recruit, but until you actually see Derrick Henry in person, I don't know. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Yeah, like it's all a great point because it's all I bet on myself. I bet on myself. I can beat all those guys out. So you show up and physically see Derrick Henry at a Yulee High School. You go, don't think I'm competing with that. Fair.
Yeah, like I remember talking to our favorite neighbor Terry Wilson back in the day, and he started off his career at Oregon, and he starts off his career at Oregon, and Oregon's got this other guy like in his recruiting class that wasn't as highly rated, and he was like a 3-star guy. He was like a local kid, and it was Justin Herbert,
of course,
and he very
fishing
quickly,
team captain.
Yeah, he gets on. Terry Wilson gets on campus in Eugene and looks at Justin Herbert as like, oh God, I made a giant mistake. I need to get out of here stat. And that's sometimes it just takes that. And for Alvin Kamara, yeah, I mean, things didn't really go well for him at Alabama. He gets hurt. He gets buried on the depth chart even more so. He had some trouble off the field as well. I'm sure that didn't help necessarily show Nick Saban that he deserves playing time. But anyways, he leaves Bama. He goes to Hutchinson College for the 2014 season, which, by the way, that's the same. I think that's the same conference that neighbor Terry Wilson played in after leaving Oregon. Never mind. I was about to make a very random connection. But the Tennessee offense that we saw in 2014, it needed help. It needed help throughout a good chunk of the Butch Jones era. Alvin Kamara, in theory, would have formed a really nice 1-2 punch with Jalen Hurd that season. In this weird scenario, though, I actually don't want to send Alvin Kamara to Tennessee. Is that bad? I think even Tennessee fans, you guys know why, because let's just say he doesn't look back on his time in Knoxville in that situation fondly. We saw the comments that he had Monday Morning Quarterback when he was in the NFL saying that his Tennessee experience was, quote, effed up. Yep, probably should have gotten the ball a little bit more than the 107 carries he maxed out at his 2 seasons playing there when he was the more efficient player than Jalen Hurd. And yeah, it just didn't necessarily. He was one of those guys that once he got to the NFL and exploded with the Saints, it was like, oh, Tennessee messed this up badly, very, very badly. So we could have found another home for Alvin Kamara that wasn't necessarily Tennessee, that would have allowed all of us to be able to watch more of what we've seen with the Saints with him throughout his college career.
So this one's so interesting to your point, because like when you talk about like, oh, I'm on this staff, it's like, oh, now I'm with Butch Jones. And I think that was always going to happen for him. And especially if you think about how colorful the personality is. And I love Alvin Kamara. Like all of his workouts, all his videos, he's so funny, and just the complete opposite of Butch Jones. I don't think he could have survived another year at Tennessee. I think that stuff would have bubbled up earlier, and then he would have had to transfer twice, and then it's a different conversation. So it weirdly worked out so perfectly for him because he was able to thread the needle with. He flashed enough to get the looks. I think he went in like the 3rd round. That was after the Saints signed Peterson, but he ended up on obviously a great team for him. And the Saints, they already had a great offensive line. They already had Drew Brees. At the time, they had Sean Payton. So he was able to kind of rebuild his image with the Saints versus at Tennessee. That's the weird thing about him, is that he left Alabama and his image didn't, like, it just, he didn't really get the springboard in the way that Cam did, or some of these other guys we'll talk about. Tennessee was okay to him, but to your point, and not to rehash all this, it's so fascinating to me, though. It's like the herd stuff, the back and forth. I think that situation was really toxic. And so, yeah, like we could put him on another team and he gets drafted higher, but him getting more carries, I think, was negative for him because he got to the NFL so fresh that it was like, he's been an all-purpose back his whole time. He's been a screen threat. He's been able to really cut on those like tendons and ligaments. and he's really heavy, and like people don't understand how big he is because of how fast he is. I don't think he would have maintained that shiftiness if he had played like another year of an SEC schedule as a starter.
It's a good point. And it's worth remembering that his time at Tennessee was still like, he still did enough to show that he was worthy of being a 3rd round pick, which if you're a running back getting picked in the 3rd round, you're doing something right and you're impressing people in that pre-draft process. So it probably set him up in that way as well. But it's probably more so just a thing for Tennessee fans to be like, we had that guy and it was still that hard to be able to move the ball down the field. Like that's the part that won't necessarily sit well, because another guy on this list is 2017 Jalen Hurd.
Yep. Wait, really quick. I do want to say that he did benefit from a rule we've talked about now, apparently. He played with a nose ring in. So the NCAA just continues to make stuff up because now you can't do that. So he just threaded the needle perfectly. They didn't make him take his nose ring out. He got the Texas A&M game as his one lone interview that put him in the 3rd round. So it kind of worked out perfectly for this very eccentric gentleman.
If you wear the shield, does it guard the nose guard?
They couldn't tell he had a nose ring the entire time till the post-game handshake. They're like, wait, you're DQ'd. Anyway.
How dare you? We're going to take all of your rushing stats off the board. Those don't
Tennessee
count.
is once again under sanctions. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, 2017 Jalen Hurd. He stunned a lot of people when in the middle of that 2016 season, it's like, Jalen Hurd is transferring? What? Like this guy was a 2nd-team All-SEC back the year before, and he came back as one of the more popular names in the SEC coming into 2016. But that was a big, big deal at a time when there was no, this guy's getting wooed for NIL purposes, and it appeared to be a falling out with the Tennessee coaching staff in the middle of that season. And he waits all the way until the following spring wraps up to be able to settle on his next home, which again, if you're not able to play right away, it's a little bit different. You can kind of take your time with that decision. And as we saw, it was a pretty significant 180 to go to Baylor and change positions. I mean, this is somebody who probably was a little bit ahead of his time, just slightly, maybe a couple years later, he could have benefited even more with the NFL getting into more of the all-purpose type backs. Hey, you got to be a pass catcher out of the backfield. And maybe he could have tapped into that a little bit better than he did, or the weird path that he kind of took to that, but not really. And it'd be a really good player at Baylor too. That 1 year that he spent there, I mean, he was nearly 1,000-yard receiver, ends up having over 1,000 scrimmage yards. I think he was like Big 12 newcomer of the year, and ends up being a guy that Tennessee fans are looking at going, crap, like we let that guy get away. Just a weird college career. And, if this were 2024, he would have had his falling out with the coaching staff in the middle of 2016. Like maybe the coaching staff, if we want to really get into it, we'd say the coaching staff would have been worried that he could just transfer without penalty, and they would have just listened to whatever he felt about his injuries, about his playing time, his usage, whatever. And maybe that would have created a world in which Tennessee could have kept him. Let's just say hypothetically, he could have hit the portal post 2016. He would have had a wide selection of suitors to be able to say, hey, come be this hybrid type role. Ohio State was in the mix. He could have been in that like Curtis Samuel type role that he was in, as that H-back type guy. I don't know if that specifically was the role that he was looking for, but nonetheless, it was an unhappy player who ends up having his professional career kind of cut short from injuries. And he probably looks back and is like, man, I wish I didn't spend one of those years of my prime sidelined because of NCAA rules.
So he's such an interesting one, right? Because the only thing he could really change was to be a more effective college player. And I'll tell you why, okay? Because I would literally agree with you in 99.5% of situations, but here's the one that I won't. Because the San Francisco 49ers were a Super Bowl team the year they drafted him inexplicably in the 3rd round. Their 2nd round pick was DeBoer's Samuel. So, like, if he was ever going to be used correctly, it would be by the team who took a shot on him and DeBoer's Samuel and said, one of y'all's going to figure this out.
True.
And he's 6'5". Like, this dude is not Derrick Henry. There's only like 2 dudes ever that can play running back at 6'5". And so, point being, like, for him, it's more of like a, dude, maybe you should have switched to wide receiver sooner because you're just not strong enough to be so big that everyone can get a hand on you in the NFL. But that being said, I mean, that's the only thing you could really, it's the fact of, maybe you could have had a more fun college career. Like to your point, maybe we could have had more reps of this great player that we saw in college. But the cool thing about him is we know exactly what he was in the NFL, which is like the Niners know exactly how to find these guys. They thought he was one. Just turned out he wasn't, you know?
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think he ended up getting hurt too. And that didn't necessarily help him in his professional career. And once Debo became a thing, Debo was the guy that couldn't necessarily stay healthy. And then he's gotten to the NFL and has mostly been able to kind of avoid those injuries with his very atypical usage. So, yeah, look, yeah,
You're so right. Yep, he was in IR, for 2 straight seasons. So, no, good point. He just got injured.
Yeah, so like, how much do you wish that you could kind of go back and just see some of these guys more in their prime? That's kind of the point of this discussion is – like, I realize that some of these guys, it's their own doing and, they could have put themselves in different spots. And I totally get that. But just wanting to see really good players not be on the sideline in the middle of when they're 19, 20, 21 years old, just because the NCAA is telling you, oh, you have to for this specific reason. That's more so the sticking point. And I think it's magnified when we see guys that have those shortened careers. Another one that we're going to get to in a minute here. Who like you just want to be able to say, I just want just another season of watching you would have been really fun.
Yep.
All right, well, guy that we talked about a lot last year, the late Ryan Mallett, 2008 Ryan Mallett specifically.
I saw enough of him. He cooked us.
He was a great player at Arkansas. He was a lot of fun to watch. Still one of the prime examples of why players need rights. They need flexibility because he comes into Michigan as this big 5-star recruit. He was backup to Chad Henne as a true freshman. And then after his true freshman year, Lloyd Carr retires, Rich Rod comes in, and Tate Forcier is the guy for Rich Rod.
Yep.
And I mean, look, that gets into a discussion about whether or not offensive-minded coaches should find the quarterback that fits their system or if they should fit their system to the personnel. I think Bobby Petrino does a much better job than Rich Rod at the latter. And he is that's probably why they worked so well together. But Mallett transfers to Arkansas and he sits in 2008. I'm going to just say this. I think Ryan Mallett would have been better than 2008 Casey Dick. I don't think that's bold.
Sure was. I was like, nope, that's who started. Yep.
Honestly, like Arkansas fans have basically been wondering when they're going to be able to find their next Ryan Mallett. This was a guy who did such great things for that program in the time that he spent there. And if you could go back and tell Arkansas fans, you get one more year of Ryan Mallett and you don't necessarily have to deal with him just being on the sideline and watching an inept year one offense, I think they would definitely sign up for that. So yeah, I think Ryan Mallett is definitely one of the more popular pre-playoff era transfers that we had in college football.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it goes without saying, rest in peace to Ryan Mallett, the guy I got a chance to have a great conversation with up in Arkansas, and we did some stuff for SDS that was super cool. But yeah, he was very, he was very unique. He was a 6'6" guy. He was massive. And this is kind of like you said, that was when the true spread option, like we're talking about Swamp Kings, talking about Rich Rod, that was when that offense almost overcorrected and we were going to like the Wildcat stuff and there were people just drawing stuff up on the playground. And he was a true like prototypical pro style quarterback. And he found, Bobby Petrino, which like that relationship has been talked about, but it was a little bit transactional where it was like, okay, you need a place to play football. I need a quarterback. It was not, no love lost between those two, but it was a great fit, and I just still remember like the LSU DBs bumping into each other. So I referenced at the top and like that long touchdown against us. And yeah, I mean, that was like, we can make the jokes about, the neck brace and all that, but that was for a Sugar Bowl. Like that's the key is that was a really good Arkansas team led by Ryan Mallett. So I think that, and Arkansas has been a proud brand, they've seen that success. And that was the last time I feel like Arkansas, we talk about some of the Pittman stuff, but in terms of it truly being, we're going to go up, we're going to beat LSU, we're going to win these games, we're going to play for the Sugar Bowl. You're right. I think they're looking for that guy again. And KJ was that for points of time, but he was a guy that could make all the throws. And I think that any version of him, sometimes as a head coach, you like to have a little bit of the hopium. You like to have a little bit of the, okay, year one, we're 5-7, but we got this, like we were talking about, this mystery guy coming through. Maybe as a coach, you like to have that little bit of a promise so that you can work all the kinks out. But at the same time, I think it's pretty fair to say they at least make a bowl year one with Ryan Mallett, and he's a player to watch versus just like, whoa, remember this guy?
Yeah, he would have had an unbelievable 3-year career. And who knows, maybe that means 2010 doesn't unfold the way that it does, because if he gets to be able to play in 08 and 09.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe he leaves sooner.
So yeah, maybe
Wow.
we ultimately, it's possible that we weren't ultimately robbed of a Ryan Mallett season. It just, again, it feels so frustrating to see these guys on the bench, unable to play, when it's just simply a matter of, hey, this entire situation in Michigan changed. And if I don't change with it, then I will look back on my 4-year college career and be like, oh, I guess I got my Michigan degree. That worked out well for me. So,
just want to quickly speak on that 2010 Arkansas season. It goes underappreciated. Lost to Alabama by 4 points. And obviously they lost to Ohio State in that Sugar Bowl. But I do want to just speak on this 2010 Cam Newton team that everyone said was not talented. Yeah, they put up 65 points on that Arkansas team. So Ryan Mallett scored 43, which is enough to win most days out of the week. This team that everyone swears was horrible, 65 points on a Sugar Bowl team. Just to bring that back up. That's about the only game that was like out of reach. But again, who among us didn't get smacked by Cam Newton? So yeah, that's probably the best Arkansas team I've seen with my eyes.
Yeah, even better than 07, right? Because 07 beats LSU.
Man, come on, bro. That wasn't even a good team. That was the whole thing about that team, is that they wasn't even a good team, bro.
We got that wood. We got that wood. All right. Speaking of 2010, Jarvis Jones. This guy was a monster. Just an absolute monster. Yeah. We need to talk more about how good Jarvis Jones was. Like, go back, watch 2012 SEC Championship. And you'll be reminded this cat was everywhere. He was on a tear. I mean, best linebacker in college football. I won Jack Lambert Award. It's easy to forget with him that he started his career at USC, and USC told him, look, we can't play you. You've got this neck injury. We can't medically clear you. You have spinal stenosis, they called it. And Georgia was like, yeah, I think we could find a way for you to be able to play, and we can sign off on this. And so he still ends up having to sit 2010. And as great as a player as he was, and even though Georgia at the time had Justin Houston, that team was still bad in 2010. They needed him. I don't think that just having Jarvis Jones means that they're able to actually tackle Cam, but it does probably make a difference in their overall win-loss. I mean, that's the only losing season that Mark Richt has ever had as a head coach. Think about that. And it wasn't that the defense was as bad as it was at times. Like, what was it, 2013 that they were? Yeah, I think it was 2013 that they were just a total doormat, and it was kind of Todd Grantham's undoing at Georgia. But they still had so many of those moments where they just couldn't get stops. And it was a defense that, if we compared those groups to what we know of Georgia defense today, I mean, it's so vastly different. And it's because Georgia now has a bunch of guys like Jarvis Jones. That's not to say that he's a dime a dozen.
I don't know about that.
Okay, let me rephrase that. You're right. Let me rephrase that. Georgia in the Kirby Smart era has had a bunch of impact players that were really good, like Jarvis Jones. Yeah. Not necessarily all of them at the same time. I shouldn't say. You're right. I phrased that incorrectly.
I think that Kobe Dean's like the only guy that's right there. Like you said, like
they don't have 11 Jarvis Jones. They don't have 11 Jarvis Jones, but they've had guys since then that you've gone, man, that dude, it feels like they just make every single play. And he was that guy. So yeah, I mean, 2010 Georgia, they needed a little bit of that juice that he could have provided. Assuming that he was medically able to play that first year, he would have been an impact player on that defense.
Yeah, I mean, Jarvis Jones, it's such a good call out there because he's from, Lumpkin, Georgia. He was always kind of seen as his hometown kid. I know he's gotten lots of love in Georgia. And to your point, it's like, that 2010 team is not looked upon favorably by Georgia fans, especially after, the teams they had before and after it. And, you go up down the schedule, like you said, there's some overtime losses. There's some, like, a lot of these are one-possession losses, including, it's like, would they have turned their season around? Probably not. Probably would have stopped them from losing at Colorado and to UCF, though. I think that's pretty fair. Jarvis Jones would have probably done enough to one turnover here or there, and those teams will do it.
Didn't they start off 1-4 or something like that?
They sure did, buddy. And their one was UL Lafayette.
Ugh.
Sorry, University of Louisiana.
Yeah, back then it's still Louisiana Lafayette. You can still call it that. Yeah.
I want them to disappear me.
Yeah. That guy was just a fun player to be able to watch when he was healthy. And again, didn't have a long NFL career. I think it was also cut short because of injuries, if I'm not mistaken, and would have been one of these guys that like, just give me another year of Jarvis Jones. Just let me see that guy play football. Okay. This one is this is going to sound like it might sound like a little bit of a stretch, but I can explain it. 2008 JJ Watt.
Okay.
Nobody's going to bring this up in this discussion because he switched from tight end at Central Michigan. They originally wanted to play him at tackle, and he was like gaining weight. He showed that he could like keep on weight and do all those things. So they're like, why don't you play tackle for us? But the decision that he made was, let me just go walk on at Wisconsin. I want to play a different spot. I feel like I could help on the defensive side. And you very much saw a special player once he got put there. I mean, think about this. The guy goes from being a walk-on and sits out that 2008 season. 2009, he steps on the field and is ready to go. I mean, 15 and a half tackles for loss. He had this Ndamukong Suh-like ability to take over a game. Mm-hmm. And that is extremely rare at that spot. It's pretty rare to see a guy that can get into the backfield with ease, like at the variety of spots, because he could line up on the interior as well. And he was in a spot where, look, eligibility back then really wasn't debated for guys like him. And it was very different once the Baker Mayfield thing happened. And then it was like, okay, what are we doing? Why are we trying to limit walk-ons and their eligibility as well? So this is well before all of that, obviously. But he could have played at a high level from the jump. In his 2 years that he was on the field at Wisconsin, man, he was a game wrecker, just an absolute machine, and probably could have done the same thing in 2008.
Yeah, I was like, hold on, there's a two Ndamukong Suhs. This man had 21 TFLs as a junior.
He was awesome. JJ Watt, like, he was a weird dude. Like once he got a lot of crap, once he got to the NFL, it's like, all right, stop trying to be Captain America.
Right.
He was a force in college, man. He would just take over these games. I think was it the Nebraska game? It was either the Nebraska or the Ohio State game that I remember seeing him for the first time and just going, who is this Watt fellow? Because that name
this filler
speaks for itself.
JJ Watt.
Yeah. Little did we know.
Yeah, I mean, no, he's a guy too, and this is the conversations I love to have. Is it's like, you got to gaslight yourself sometimes, right? And so I'm sure if you talk to him, you'd be like, well, I needed that year off to really like humble me and get me whatever. But he does feel like he just showed up and started kicking butt, right? Like he does. It doesn't really feel like that's the thing. Is like, hey, sometimes guys are just Trevor Lawrence. Like sometimes guys just are good at their job. Sometimes guys are one of the Bosa's. They just show up and start kicking butt. And this is just a guy that, recruiting services and obviously his coaches at Central Michigan missed. I mean, Big Swagoo famously also switched from tight end. So like that just happened sometimes. But yeah, I think that was just also a coaching staff that was not throwing him passes, I think probably would have helped him another year of doing that,
This is a guy that I think, look, if we could all just put on weight that effortlessly and just assume that that's how it was going to be immediately, then we would say like, all right, why doesn't everybody switch position and just go be a defensive lineman and just wreck games like that? And you're right. He probably would push back and be like, oh, I didn't need that year to be able to like gain weight, figure the position out, whatever. No. I have no problem gaslighting these guys. You would have been awesome from the jump. Or at the very least, instead of sitting out, you would have provided these flashes of brilliance and we would have been amazed to be able to watch the things you do on a field.
Yep.
Okay, a guy that's not nearly that big, much smaller. Guy, JJ Watt has probably had meals bigger than this guy. 2016 Kyler Murray.
I don't know if you're talking about like as an athlete or as a person, but as a person, it's accurate.
I said what I said.
He's killed deer bigger than Kyler Murray.
Probably. Yeah, probably. We need a little bit of context here because he wasn't playing in 2016 in Oklahoma. So if you say like a season that a lost season, a season I would want to have back, it's like, well, Baker was established as the guy there. So it's not like he was robbed of an opportunity to start or something like that. This isn't necessarily similar to Ryan Mallett at Arkansas. But he actually ended up being blocked from a starting job for 2 seasons. And at the time, if you recall, I told you before we were going to bring up the Baker Mayfield rule again. At the time that Kyler Murray announced he was leaving Texas A&M for Oklahoma, December 2015, we thought Baker Mayfield has 1 more year of eligibility left. 2016 will be his last year, and then it'll set up well for Kyler to be able to play at Oklahoma after that and be the starter in 2017. It wasn't until the following July, after we find out Kyler's going to Oklahoma, that the Big 12 reversed that decision and say, Baker Mayfield, you can have this extra year. You can have 2017. Call me crazy. But if Kyler had known that at the time, I don't think he's signing up for 2 years of sitting on the bench at Oklahoma. I just don't. I think he's saying, I'll sit 1 year, but sitting 2, I mean, why? Like Kyler played as a true freshman at Texas A&M. Why wouldn't you try and find a situation that's a little bit more on the fast track for you to be able to play? So it would have been interesting if he could have known that going into 2016. Texas was the school that I originally had in mind, but I actually went back and looked at this because I was like, well, surely there was some discussion about him going to Texas, not just as a recruit in high school, but after that first year at Texas A&M. And Texas apparently didn't want him. Yeah.
Would have been Charlie Strong at that point? Who was that?
It would have been Charlie Strong.
Yeah.
They wanted Shane Buechele and Sam Ehlinger. They were convinced that those guys were the future. Sam Ehlinger.
Listen, Sam Ehlinger did a lot for Texas.
Good college quarterback. Okay. Did some great things. He wasn't Kyler Murray. All right. Just a peak Texas 2010s quarterback story. If there ever was one, like right there, you had 2 opportunities to get that guy, and still it wasn't able to ultimately work. But yeah, maybe look, could Kyler have like gone to Auburn? Maybe, maybe even a little post Dak Mississippi State with Mullen would have been fun. And Nick Fitzgerald ended up being a great quarterback there, but he ain't Kyler Murray either. He would have had suitors, no doubt about it. And if you could have known, hey, you're not going to have to deal with this weird eligibility hurdle, and the Baker Mayfield rule, what it is and what the ruling is going to be, Kyler's college career plays out differently. It just does.
Well, now here's an insane one, right? But just think about it. Guess who didn't have a starting quarterback to start the 2016 season?
Many teams. Give me a hint.
The Alabama Crimson Tide.
2016, you still had such a loaded room, though. If you're Kyler,
you kind of did, but we're talking about freshman Jalen Hurts.
Right. Freshman Jalen Hurts, but still have the Blake Barnett situation.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you would never, ever take Blake Barnett and Cooper Bateman because those guys were the plan. With Lane Kiffin, those guys were the plan. If you had told Lane Kiffin, who ended up choosing Jalen Hurts, who is an athletic, mobile quarterback who's now obviously in the NFL, you said, hey, you could have Kyler Murray, he would have gone, absolutely. Now, Nick Saban wouldn't have loved that, but he didn't love, the Jalen Hurts, remember, fumbled in his first possession. So if you're going to say, okay, well, this guy ended up with Jalen Hurts, who was a freshman, he was the lowest recruit of the 3, they probably could have just taken Kyler Murray, because I know Kiffin would have been like, hey, bro, give me Kyler Murray. That he could have just been a multi-year starter at Alabama at that point, and then you go, no Tua, now we're doing butterfly effect. But I'm just saying, like, this is one of the few where it's like, no, he could have actually started. There are lots of jobs that really could have had multi-year Kyler Murray if this were the case.
Jalen was really good in 2016 after he gets the starting job, but if he was locked into a true battle, if you had a guy like Kyler competing for that spot, it would have been interesting. It would have been.
He probably transferred that, which he ended up doing. But point being is like I said, he was the 3rd guy on the depth chart going into that USC game. And then the other guys struggled, and then the rest is history. But it could have just been Kyler Murray because he would have had the most. He would have been the highest recruit. He would have had the qualities like Kevin we've now seen loves in a quarterback. That would have just been a horrifying situation. The team that I drafted last week with Kyler Murray.
Would you have had Jalen flip to a different school late in the recruiting process? Because if Kyler's trying to get this locked in December of 2015, remember this is before the early signing period too, and this is before any of that. So you could have had Kyler say, "Hey, look, take me over this Jalen Hurts cat, and I'll end up being better for you." Now it's fascinating that Jalen ends up replacing Kyler at Oklahoma. And their college careers, like, which college career would you rather have had? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's an actual question that you can answer, or that you can ask when Jalen finishes second in the Heisman voting in 2019, 2019 rather, has an unbelievable year, does great things in the SEC, and gets Bama to multiple national championships. But Kyler, when you win the Heisman, you're the best player in college football. It's kind of hard to push back on that sentiment, being like, yeah, I wouldn't want the Heisman Trophy winner, the guy who ends up being the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I know I just kind of already said this, but it's like, if you signed up to compete with those bums in terms of like Cooper Bateman, the guys that ended up starting that were ahead of him, you totally would have been fine with Kyler Murray, because it would have made more sense if you're Jalen Hurts to wait. That was he was famous for. Alabama was waiting, so you could have finished out the Kyler Murray thing and then just gone the Jalen Hurts, kind of the way that Oklahoma did. That could have happened at Alabama. Now there would have been no Tua, but I would take Kyler Murray. Anyway, so the other thought is, I just wanted to leave this little footnote. I think the baseball thing was always kind of a little bit of he made that decision independently, because we've kind of gone through how everything played out in kind of a negative way.
It's leverage. It's always leverage.
Because there's the A's, right? Like, you're never going to play for the A's. But like, point being is, maybe if it was the Yankees, maybe it would be different. But it wasn't. This timeline would not change that at all. So just wanted to note that. I don't think baseball factors in here.
John Elway, Russell Wilson, they use baseball as leverage. They do. Mm-hmm. People thought Bo Jackson was using baseball as leverage. I guess he was with the Bucks and the way that played out. But ultimately he did play both. So I don't think that you could say in the end that he used it as leverage. But those two guys were good examples of that. Maybe Kyler had a little bit of that as well during his recruitment. Okay, let's end with this one. My favorite one on this list: 2019 Malik Willis.
There are no notes here.
Nothing I need to say. Actually, because 2019, he sits at Liberty.
Right.
He wouldn't have been very good. Yeah. I can admit that as someone that put him in the middle of my SEC power rankings at the quarterback position. I can say in hindsight, he had some things to figure out. Mm-hmm. He had to be able to work with Hugh Freeze. There were there are conversations that I've had that have led me to believe that you could have given that guy what do they say? The what side of a barn?
Broad.
The broad side. Why couldn't I think of what that was?
The thick side of the barn.
I was going to say the chunk side of the barn.
The chunky side of the barn, yeah.
There are conversations that I've had that make me believe that Malik Willis would have struggled to hit the broad side of a barn during 2019 at Liberty. So I guess that's probably not the best example to be able to close with. But is there a part of me that just would have wanted to have seen more Malik Willis in college football, especially knowing that in the NFL it's kind of like, oh yeah, the Titans are going to rebuild around you, and then they're actually just going to take like a few looks at you in preseason and decide, you know what, that's not really not worth our time. Let's go in a different direction. I would have loved to have seen more Malik Willis in college. I would have loved to have seen him in that Auburn offense in 2019, even though I admit he would have had his struggles throwing the football. I can admit that. He still would have been electric as a runner and would have been able to do some great things. So, look, you knew 2019 Malik Willis was going to make the cut. You had to know.
Of course. And hey, well, first, I'm in love with these all having multiple pages of notes and then just like a dash under Malik Willis, like, clear out everybody. Let me cook. I'm talking Malik Willis. Anyway, I will say this too. One of the beautiful things about college football, this is not good to be clear, I'm kind of glad we're getting rid of this, was that we all have that guy that we believed in that was like, oh, he transferred. It was so much easier to get lost as a quarterback. And we all sounded crazy for like decades, like 50 years, going, hey, this guy like transferred, had to sit out a year, a guy got called up. But you're really, really hoping that like the team sucks when you're sitting. Because if an incumbent starter comes in, this is what we're not talking about, they just have your job, and there's nothing you can do. Like if it's a Ryan Mallett situation, they're 5-7. They got, what was his name?
Casey Dick.
Yeah, there you go. I was called Grady Dick. The point being, like, they have this guy, right? But you hope they don't find their, Tua or whatever, their young guy who comes up. But there's a guy I just want to talk about. This is a good example, right? You remember Gunnar Kiel?
Of course I remember Gunnar Kiel. He was committed to Indiana at one point. You better believe
and LSU. This is a guy that we were both probably being sickos looking at the recruiting boards. I've never thought about this, but he was literally committed to Indiana and then LSU and then Brian Kelly. And so he goes to Notre Dame. Funny enough, Tommy Rees takes his job, and then he's just like, all right, well, I'm going to go sit out, go to Cincinnati, whatever. All I'm saying there is not that this guy at Cincinnati who played for one of the famous Cincinnati coaches, I'm sure, because there are lots, actually. But not to say this guy would have changed, but we've seen how one game, one snap, one series can completely radically change a quarterback's career. So what's so crazy about the NCAA being so inconsistent is there are thousands of untold stories of what these seasons could have been for guys. Guys just sitting around. Stetson Bennett just sitting around. Oh, this guy's hurt. Let me go in. Like, if you had pitched me the Stetson Bennett story, I would have been like, all right, cool. That's too made up for Hollywood. So we used to be cynical and be like, oh yeah, Gunnar Kiel. Yeah, of course you said, oh, it's Cincinnati. What did that matter? Well, it affected the process, and everything is related. Like we always talk about, everything is a butterfly effect. So there are plenty of quarterbacks who couldn't participate in games, who would have been gone to, but they weren't eligible. We don't know their stories. And now they're off doing whatever in life, who maybe if they were eligible, kind of like this guy, maybe they would have played well. Maybe it would have been even like a Linsanity situation, right? Where it's just like, this guy's good for a couple of weeks that we missed out on. So that's the really unsung part of it. I just want to make this note at the end that there are so many players we're not even thinking of because they didn't have the opportunity to compete, to be in that good system. Because using the pros is such a cop-out because so many great college players were not as great in the pros, but we don't know who would have been, this quarterback at a MAC school or this quarterback at a mid-tier Big Ten school or whatever, just because they didn't have the opportunity and their backup ended up shining.
All great points. My mind was entirely on Gunnar Kiel the entire time. I'm sorry.
That's a guy, right?
My main memory of Gunnar Kiel, the day that he decommitted from Indiana, I remember I was filling in for one of our beat writers. It was actually the year after I covered Indiana football, and I was on the basketball beat, but I filled in for one of our football guys. IU played at Iowa, and it was an 11 a.m. game. I was hungover from the night before. My buddies are in Iowa. We got after it because that's just what we did. And the sun in that press box that morning, you want to talk about things that you don't want to feel when you're hungover. Pain, Will. Pain.
That corn growing sun.
And it was awful. And I remember writing that day, nursing a hangover. And I think my lead that day, IU had this unbelievable performance. Who was it? Like Roberson? Was that the guy? Yeah. And I remember writing a lead, something to the effect of on a day that all Indiana football fans were talking about a quarterback who wasn't coming to Bloomington, IU made you think about one that was. And that's what I always think of when I think of Gunnar Kiel. In addition to the 12 different teams that he repped, was Gunnar Kiel no, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. Never mind. I don't want to liken him to that. A certain recruit who's maybe flipping all over the place every single day that we don't want. We will not say his name. I know I haven't used the bleep button. We're not going to say this. He's not even a recruit. This individual's name who was wearing jerseys. I will not compare Gunnar Kiel to that. Gunnar Kiel, open invitation to come on the show. Would love to make a better memory of that morning in Iowa City in which your boy was feeling it and not in a good way.
Yep, and I just also, in a related note, wanted to note that this rule weirdly would not have affected Tate Martell, who found a way to finesse eligibility elsewhere.
Didn't affect Justin Fields either. Didn't have to bring him up for this. Yeah, the waiver process overwhelmed the NCAA.
Talking about some dudes.
Let's talk about some dudes with JD PicKell. That's exactly what we do with him. Great to be able to have him on for the first time. Talked about some dudes, talked about his career in media, kind of atypical roots, talked Kalen DeBoer recruiting, the return of A&M-Texas, that rivalry, and a lot more. So here's JD. I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is JD PicKell. JD, I've got a lot that I want to get to with you, but we first need to start with something very, very important. Juice Williams.
Yeah, I love it. I love random college football player of the day. I love it.
He'd be a good one for it too, because you always remember those names, and it's almost better when someone has a really unique name and they didn't have some long NFL career.
Dude, he's one of those two that for a minute, he kind of put Illinois back into, the national picture of college football. Not that Illinois hasn't been good over the course of, the last few seasons. I mean, heck, a couple seasons ago, they were pushing Michigan to the, to have a last-second field goal to beat them. But Juice Williams, I remember specifically, the USC-Illinois Rose Bowl, and Juice Williams had the visor, and he's this mobile quarterback. There was a lot to like about that team. I think that was with Rashard Mendenhall. Was that his running back? I think it was.
Aurelius Ben, I think, was his go-to receiver. There's a good random name. He was a big deal
squad.
At the time. Yeah, it was. They beat Ohio State that year, too. That was the big deal for that Illinois team. But you should like your idea of just like naming random college football dudes. Like you don't need my help with YouTube or anything like that. But if you just had a YouTube channel that was devoted to you and just like a few guests each day that just sat down and just named dudes and people could comment with other random dudes, those numbers would be insane. I think that idea is it's a home run sitting right there for you.
I appreciate that, dude. It's so funny because like there's nothing that novel about that concept. Like there's no like great analysis or insight or like big takeaway besides like I don't know what it is, and you can attest to this. Like the fact that we can literally probably kill an hour to hour and a half just literally naming guys like Juice Williams, Jeremiah Masoli, Nick O'Leary, Rashard Mendenhall. I mean, we go down the list here. Ted Ginn Jr. Like we just keep going down the list, and it's like it never gets old because the next one you're like, oh, I forgot about this. That's super random. I wonder what he's doing now. But he was a stud back in the day for insert whatever college football team next.
It's a great activity. Did it with my buddies a couple of weekends ago. We're just sitting there for hours on end. People are looking at us like, do you guys just do this all the time? It's like, yeah, this is like when we get on Zoom calls. This is just what we do. We at the very end of it, it's like, oh yeah, I'm having a kid, or oh yeah, I'm getting married, or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
First hour is just strictly naming dudes. It's a fun activity. I got a lot that I want to get to with you. We're going to talk some current college football stuff, but I do want to dig into your story because it's fascinating to me. You were a Swiss Army knife at Cornell, and then you thought, hey, Ivy League degree. Let me just go and do anything I want. Talk college football. Let's just talk pigskin. And you're very, very good at it. Everybody knows that who's listening to this. How in the world did you get started in this field, parlaying that career with a pretty atypical path? It's not like you were sitting there, doing the Kirk Herbstreit ESPN route, like immediately after playing. You kind of carved out a unique niche for yourself.
Yeah. Well, first, that's extremely high praise to let the viewers believe I could have done anything I wanted with that. I mean, I graduated, brother, by like the hair of my chinny chin from that school that I had no business going to in the first place. So like, shout out to them for getting me into school. Yeah, it's kind of a funny story how it all worked out. Like to make a long story short, whenever I finished up at Cornell, I had 1 year left of eligibility. And the way that conference works is if you want to use that extra year, whether it's as a senior or whatever, like you have to do it as a grad or as a undergrad student. You can't graduate and then go get your grad degree in business or X, Y, and Z topic. And so for me, it was like, man, I don't want to unenroll for a semester and try to find something to do. Like I just want to graduate on time and I'll go walk on somewhere cool. And so a lot of my family had gone to Baylor. I had a best friend at the time that was at Baylor. So I was like, I'll go walk on there. They're kind of up and coming. At the very least, like I'll have friends there. I'll have people there that I know. So did that for the better part of the summer and got into fall camp and then had to medically retire before the season even started. So I'm like, I'm in Waco, Texas. I don't really want to do a graduate program and get more student debt. Like what do I do? And was fortunate to have met the SID at the time at Baylor, Taylor Bryan, during our picture day. He was essentially asking me, hey, what do you want to do when you're done playing football? Like, what's the next thing? Probably just being nice, making conversation. But I said, I'd love to, if I could find a way to be around football in media, like college football specifically, I'd be all about that. And so I retired. And then a couple of weeks later, had someone from a digital media outlet in Waco, Texas, reach out to me, Colt Barber, and was like, hey, got your name from someone with Baylor football, heard you're interested in media. Do you want to come by and try like a post-game show? And I mean, Connor, I promise you, I probably wasn't good, had no idea what I was doing. We filmed it out of like a container that was a makeshift studio, but that sort of parlayed into more opportunities with that company and got to kind of start my own YouTube channel under their umbrella. And then, I mean, how the magic of social media, and I guess, the right people saw the right clips, and I was fortunate to kind of get some reps under my belt before getting opportunity with On3. So it's wild how it's all worked. Doesn't make any sense, but definitely very, very perfectly orchestrated. And I'm fired up to get to do it now for a job.
All I heard was Baylor opened more doors for you than Cornell.
There it is. Yeah, that's the one. That's it. That's the big takeaway.
It's pretty awesome though, because it is a good reminder that you can have experience doing X, Y, and Z. You can have all the great internships in the world and stuff like that in media, and you could feel like all these different people, but at the very least, you need passion talking about college football. And anybody that's ever listened to you talk about this sport knows that you have that in spades. that process of like getting that jump though, and being able to go to a place like On3, like what was that moment that you realized like, dude, I can do this. I can talk about this sport and I feel very comfortable doing this.
Yeah, it's funny how it all worked out, because I think for me, the thought was always like, at some point in time, I would love to make that a reality. And because you see guys in the digital media space at that point in time kind of start to get more opportunities, like RJ Young had just signed with Fox. Josh Payton, his meteoric rise was sort of going on at this point in time while I'm trying to build this YouTube channel. And I think the advice that I would give to most people whenever I get to have different conversations with them about, hey, how do I get started with a podcast? How do I get started working in sports? The big thing I've said now for the better part of the last few years is, unless you want to be Reese Davis or Chris Fowler, like I would steer more towards starting your own thing than I would getting into, local media or local TV. And that's not to say anything of those avenues, but it used to be like, okay, I got to get on with the local affiliate for CBS or for Fox or whoever, do the MMJ deal, eventually get into sports, maybe get seen by another market. And then it's like it used to be like a 15, 20-year track where you could maybe get a shot to work for an ESPN or whoever. Whereas now it's like, you got an iPhone, you got access to YouTube. Okay, like, hey, let's get cooking here. Let's buy a cheap mic and let's find a way to make something shake. So I guess to answer your question more specifically, like for me, it was more so, how can I build this channel I'm working on right now and kind of grow in that regard? Because for me, I was still doing an 8 to 5 job at an office. Like I was recruiting for an in-home care company. It was great. It was paying the bills, and I was able to do this on the side a couple of times a week, go into my lunch break and go, shoot some content. And so for me, it was always, how can I keep, getting better, building my audience, building our platform, and was really fortunate to where it came together in a really random and again, orchestrated way. But it was something I think I felt confident in, because like you said, we love college football. I felt like I had a good gauge for things that I was talking about. And it was always on the horizon I had hoped, but to have it become a reality was exciting for sure.
I think you and Josh do such a great job of being extremely neutral voices and being people who just, and I try and embody this as well. Like you just want to be a call it like you see it type person. You need to start like lean into the Ivy League bias, just let that come out in random moments. Like, you don't really get to play around with that as much. And it kind of benefits you in that way. And that, I'm sure people, like, if you say something nice about the SEC, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'll talk about something else. Is that the one that you get the most though, where people are like, dude, talk about something else that's not just this specific conference, even though you don't have that specific affiliation to it?
Dude, it's so funny that you bring this up, because I actually, before we got on air here, was working on a segment for a future show of like, how real is SEC biased? And the first part of that segment is going to be me just unpacking my background, where I'm like, hey, I didn't go to an SEC school, don't have immediate family went to an SEC school. I grew up in Southern California. Like the SEC bias for me is like, it's kind of a stretch if you want to say that there's some bias there. And I think that the answer I would have to that is twofold. One is, at the end of the day, there is a supply and demand model here when it comes to our business as well as any other business. Like if I run a grocery store and Pop-Tarts are selling out, like I would be an idiot to go say, let's stock up on green beans. That's what the people want. We got to make sure they got green. When it's like, no, they're telling you they want Pop-Tarts. Make sure you give them Pop-Tarts. And so there's one aspect where it is supply and demand, and if people want to have, topics around Auburn, Tennessee, Georgia, Bama, Tech, like all the SEC schools, it's like, well, okay, we're going to try and meet that demand. The other part of it, I think, is there's an objection a little bit to like this SEC. I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but the SEC bias thought of like, well, they always get benefit of the doubt. They're always, whenever it's close, they always lean the SEC team because the logo. And it's like, well, I see the objection there, but if SEC bias and SEC conspiracy with the media is a real thing, like the NFL draft is in on it, because over the course of the last 17 years, the SEC has had the most players drafted. So like gives a little validity to the eye test statement. But again, I go back to just what you were saying about, do you get tired of talking about specific teams? Not really, because I think it really is fun, as you can imagine and could attest to in your same space, like the engagement, the community, and being able to talk to people about what they care about is kind of what makes this whole thing go. So I'd love to talk more Baylor on our show. I'd love to talk more Wisconsin, but at the end of the day, it is supply and demand, and we try and meet that as best we can.
All right, let's talk about your SEC bias here.
Yeah, I love
it. Something that you've been digging into is and I'm not one that really gets into the weeds with verbal commitments anymore. I just think this day and age with the transfer portal and stuff like that, I've kind of explained why that's not really something that's worth my time. But the Keelan Russell thing that happened where he flips from SMU to Bama, I saw it got a lot of reactions. I saw Moscona kind of going off on it, saying, that Bama's, a shell of its former self. But like, tell a skeptic why it isn't necessarily an indictment of Kalen DeBoer's recruiting, and that it might more so be a sign that he actually could be hitting his stride with this.
I think the Keelan Russell commitment in a vacuum, you just, like you said, you see that he was committed to SMU. Is that a G5 school? No, it's an ACC school. Okay, so let's put some respect on SMU's name. Also, like Keelan Russell, even though he's committed to SMU, it should tell you a lot about how these services go about evaluating these kids. Like, he was still a 4-star cat. He's still one of the top quarterbacks in that 2025 class, regardless of who he was committed to. And so I think Kalen DeBoer being able to land his commitment, to me, just says, okay, now you have the centerpiece of your class. And also, to go back on what I was saying a second ago, Rhett Lashley also knows quarterbacks. So the fact that he was able to recruit and land the Keelan Russell should speak volumes to Keelan Russell even further. I mean, Preston Stone's turned it up at SMU. He was also a guy who had options before he committed to SMU. But Kalen DeBoer now has like a centerpiece for his class, in my opinion, to really recruit behind. Like, you see what that guy has under the hood, and you see the ability, and he's also playing big boy football in the state of Texas at Duncanville. Like, all of the ability he has, to me, is very evident, and I think is evident to most folks that are, just have a working pair of eyes. And I think that same thing can be said for recruits that are considering Bama and saying, okay, if I go to Alabama, I'm playing with a Keelan Russell. If I'm a receiver, I have someone who can get me the football. If I'm an offensive lineman, I have someone worth blocking for. If I'm a defensive player, I have somebody that I know if we get a 3 and out, we get the ball back to him, like, good things are going to happen. And so I think it still is a little bit early for us to know without a shadow of a doubt who Kalen DeBoer is going to be as a recruiter long-term at Alabama. But landing a top 10 quarterback in the class of 2025 in Keelan Russell, regardless of where he was committed before, dude can spin it, dude can play, and I think it's only going to help Alabama going forward here on the recruiting trail.
What is recruiting success for him in a post-Nick Saban world? Because it's not fair to just assume that number one classes are on the way. It's not realistic that there will be a drop-off. It's just, what is it going to look like? But at the same time, Bama should never just be sitting there with a number 13 class in the country. It's probably somewhere in the middle of it, but how do you look at that? Like, what would be him kind of passing that test in his first full cycle?
I think the first full cycle, if you can be in the conversation of a top 5 class, we're in good shape, because it is year one. There's still some people that are going to have question marks around, well, what is Alabama really under Kalen DeBoer? Who are they going to be long-term? And that's fair to have those questions. But I think over the course of the next 2 to 3 seasons, top 5 consistently, if you're winning on the field at the level at which Alabama expects to win at now with this expanded playoff, I feel like that's pretty reasonable. I mean, the resources for Alabama, I think we're going to see really flex their muscle a little bit more in this post-Saban world. People talk about the Nick Saban tax and the Nick Saban discount with the NIL. Maybe that was true, maybe that wasn't, but I promise you now, Alabama, if they want to play ball and they decide to play ball, they got a lot of people in Tuscaloosa, Alabama with some deep pockets that I'm sure would be more than willing to help them acquire some top talent. So my big question really is, for this upcoming season, can they restabilize those optics? Can they answer those questions for some recruits that are maybe on the fence of, well, hey, if I go to Bama, is it still going to be Bama? Is it still going to be a team that competes for conference championships and SEC and national championships? And I just mentioned the SEC. Are they going to still be one of those top tier SEC teams? And so I think success in year one, making the playoff, being at least a 10-win football team, that to me is really what could kind of lay the foundation for success in the future out there in Tuscaloosa under Kalen DeBoer.
What'd you learn from Bryce Underwood after spending a little bit of time with him?
And he's a cool customer. Like, he is one of those guys. So we had, 45 plus of the top high school prospects in the country here. And a lot of those sessions and a lot of those different moments throughout the event, you're just kind of trying to gauge the room, and you're kind of just observing how do these kids interact with each other, and not in a sense of like, I want to try to exactly figure out who they are, but you're just kind of trying to get a gauge for, who guys are gravitating towards. And it felt like, to me, you would look at a crowd and you would look at who was kind of in the middle of those crowds. people just gravitated to Bryce Underwood. Like, he absolutely has the it factor. Seeing him in person, he is every bit of what he's billed as physically. I think he welcomes the pressure of being that top recruit in America. And I'm excited to see what he is at LSU, man, because now we're kind of starting to enter into a world where LSU is sort of developing a pretty strong track record with quarterbacks that have had success across multiple staffs, from Joe Burrow, now with Jaden Daniels and Brian Kelly, and Bryce Underwood could absolutely be the next guy. I was pushing hard for Cornell to stay in the race there. He told me they text him every day. I think he's on some automated system where he gets a text to come and camp with them. Still TBD on that. I'm not holding my breath, but at the same time, we're gonna recruit to the whistle here, Connor.
Just get that internship on Wall Street.
Right.
That's the NIL. Like that play. That's I had Tom Zivikowski. You want to talk about random dudes? Had him on the show a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how you can't enforce a summer workout program at an Ivy League program.
Yeah.
When you're like, go do that. That's going to make you more money. That's going to be more beneficial in the long term. I realize Bryce Underwood's got some options, but that's a unique play. I mean, Cornell's got it. Others don't.
Yeah, he seems pretty locked in with LSU, but I'm gonna hold out hope until pen meets paper. I'm gonna hold out hope, but LSU is definitely getting a good one with him, man. He's gonna be a stud.
It's interesting to think about how new this conference that we're talking about is going to be this year, and it'll really kind of sink in at media days next month of talking about Oklahoma and Texas and all that stuff. And for those of us that do this on a daily basis, this isn't necessarily that new for us, but it feels like one of the rare dubs of realignment is getting this Texas A&M rivalry back and getting that on the calendar on an annual basis. How soon do you think this will be a top 5 rivalry in the sport? Or is it already there just by virtue of it being back this year?
I think it is a top 5 rivalry in the sport. I'm trying to think where I would put it ahead of. I think a lot of it, too, has to do with the health of this rivalry. Like, if Mike Elko can get A&M rolling, like, this is going to be must-see television. I mean, it's going to be must-see television regardless, but it's going to have more of a national draw to it year in and year out if Elko can kind of get things rolling and if Sark can keep things rolling out there in Austin. The thing I love about it, too, is, like, even though we haven't had this game played since, 2011, there's been zero love lost between either of these fan bases. I understand they played in other sports, but, like, the chirping that goes on social media, and Connor, I know you see it firsthand, like, it is as if they were playing every single day, like, between these two fan bases on Twitter and in the comment section. Like, it is like next door neighbor kind of hate. And the impact I'm most curious to watch here as they start playing over the course of the next couple of seasons is what happens on the recruiting trail. Because how often have we seen A&M and Texas be down, for the final 2 for a top recruit in the country? If A&M starts winning on the field and maybe gets a couple of wins over Texas on the field, does that swing the pendulum back towards A&M as being a national power? That's probably putting the cart before the horse a little bit there, but that to me will have the largest ripple effect. And one more thing I would say about this too, I don't think we're that far removed from this game being like a key box that a head coach from A&M or a head coach from Texas has to check, in the same way that Ohio State and Michigan, a head coach has to win that game. And so you can be undefeated going into that game, but if you lose that game too many times in a row, going to make some people very unhappy and could arrive in some pretty uncomfortable situations, kind of like we're talking about with Ryan Day right now. So I think, to answer your question, is a top 5 rivalry for me? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's you can find different moments in which that's been an unequivocal yes. Like, there's no debate about it whatsoever, and it does depend on both teams, obviously, being up to the task and actually looking like they're capable of competing for playoff spots and doing all those things. It's preseason prediction time. You try and come up with a few of these where you got the crystal ball and you're kind of trying to figure out, like, all right, what are my upsets here? What are my upsets there? What the storylines that are going to follow? What odds do you give A&M to play spoiler in that game this year? And that game against Texas, where Texas could have everything on the line going into College Station for the first time in forever, hostile atmosphere it's going to be. Do you give A&M an actual shot to be able to pull off that upset year one? And I'm saying, is it an upset as we're sitting here talking about in June?
Sure.
But it feels like something crazy would have to happen for that not to be considered an upset.
Oh, yeah, well, 110%. Like, I think the fact that it's at Kyle Field, too, and who knows what's going on at the end of that season for A&M and what's going on at the end of the season for Texas. But assuming that Texas has a lot to play for, assuming A&M is, let's just for the sake of this conversation, say they're sitting there right around 7-4, so a win puts you at 8, a loss puts you at 5 losses. I promise they would hate to go 7-5 that first year under Elko, as would any team, but I think there will be a strong sense of y'all forgot about us. Y'all thought you were better than us. You guys came to the SEC and thought you were just going to roll through here. And I think there's going to be a very, very big trying to get back factor when it comes to A&M and Texas, and the Aggies trying to really prove a point with Texas' first year in the SEC. So I think that one's going to be close. To me, that gives me like Iron Bowl vibes, where it doesn't really matter what's going on with either team. Something weird is probably going to be in effect. You probably delete logic from the file for that week when it comes to breaking down that game. Also, A&M's got a quarterback. Like, I think Connor Wegman, from what we've seen from him in small doses, is good enough to make you feel like, okay, if he's on, we're going to have a chance, regardless of who we're playing against. So there's a lot of ifs and buts. I know it's a long way away, but A&M, I absolutely give a chance. And if A&M has something to play for even further, Connor, could you imagine if we get that game for a playoff spot for A&M? I think that would be all the makings of what we need for college football with the return of that rivalry.
If they were both, they would. A&M would have to be sitting there at 9-2, something like that.
Yeah,
maybe Texas also 9-2 or 10-2. Everybody's talking about the games that are going to be taken away and the significance of them, but that could actually be. You're exactly right. If that does indeed play out, A&M does what few people think is possible in year one under Elko. It would be fascinating to see. I'm struggling with whether or not I want to pick Texas to win a national championship this year, which that in itself feels like a testament to Sark and the job that he's done, and really the year 3 that he had. Where do you stand overall on Texas when you maybe will get some people are like, hey, they're going to struggle with the grind of the SEC. This is going to be much different than the Big 12. And at the same time, realizing that you don't do what Texas did in Bama last year just by chance. That's not a fluke to win in the fashion that they did. Are you putting them into that absolutely shortlist national championship type team? If Georgia doesn't win it, maybe it would be Texas.
Yeah, I definitely do right now for a couple of reasons. I think they have been building with the SEC in mind from a roster perspective, and you lose 2 All-Americans on the defensive line. There's no way to just snap your fingers and say that's no big deal. That will be a factor, but I think they've stockpiled in the trenches over the course of these last few cycles and also using the portal to put themselves in position to still be successful in the SEC. And the big thing for me, too, is like how often do we talk about Texas and the culture problems and the underachieving because of those culture problems? Like, when I watched Texas, especially last season, I didn't see culture issues. Now, it's a new locker room. You brought in new guys, but at the exact same time, a lot of those leaders are still there. Talking about Quinn Ewers, Alfred Collins will have to step up and be a guy for you. But like by the majority of those guys that were a part of that national championship or that college football playoff team last year, it's going to compete for national championship this year, are still in that locker room. And the thing with me around Texas is there were so many instances a season ago where we could have seen bad culture show up. You go into Tuscaloosa, it's a big game, it's college game day, everyone's watching. Do you faint at the moment of truth? End up winning that game. And then the question is, will you come out of that game? How do you handle success? We're able to have success. They go and play Oklahoma. Tough loss. Do the wheels come off the wagon now for Texas after you lose a game you weren't supposed to in a rivalry game? They kept on winning. They lose their quarterback. Okay, do you mail it in with your leader out of the lineup? Kept on winning, found ways to win with defense. So last year's team is not this year's team, but I do think Steve Sarkisian and the culture and values he solidified out there in Austin, I think that's going to pay dividends when you put it together with that roster they currently have. So I absolutely would buy stock as Texas as a national title contender in 2024. I don't think last year was a fluke at all.
I want to get you out of here with a little bit of rapid fire. Just 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. Does that work for you?
Love it. Love it.
All right. This one's near and dear to your heart. Is Capri Sun the clear number 1 juice box? Or, and I'm going to date myself saying this, I don't care, do Mondo squeezers count? Even though I'm pretty sure they're discontinued. You might be able to get them on eBay somewhere, but I don't think you can just go to the grocery store and get a Mondo.
Quick question. Does Sunny D factor into this conversation?
Can you get Sunny D in a juice box, or is it just the big cartons?
I think it's the little bottle. It's like juice box size.
Okay. It's juice. I think that kind of is Sunny D better than Capri Sun, I guess is the question.
Yeah. For me, the sugar rush you get from a Sunny D, especially on a high UV kind of day, I will lean Sunny D. But if that's, if there's someone watching who says that's absolute ridiculousness, get it out of there. Capri Sun has stood the test of time. It is proven. It is nostalgia in a pouch. I will absolutely lean Capri Sun if Sunny D is not a variable that we can account for there.
If you could put Sunny D in Capri Sun's packaging, you have the perfect drink.
Done.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, if Clemson is Chick-fil-A and USC is In-N-Out, who is Taco Bell now that we don't have Pac-12 after dark? Is it just like a Mountain West team that scores a lot of points, like a UNLV or something like that?
That's tough, man. Taco Bell. I heard so in the comment section, someone compared Notre Dame to Taco Bell with a strong start and maybe not as good of a finish. Like maybe later you don't feel as good with Taco Bell. I thought that made a lot of sense, but I think Notre Dame's going to kind of stand the test of time. I like where your head's at with like G5 school, scores a lot of points. Give me Boise State with Taco Bell. I think Boise State's a lot of fun, kind of fun branding. That's a not very thought through answer for you, but I'll go ahead and say Boise State is got the Liv Moss action on.
Yeah, gotta just be playing late. That's the key.
Yeah.
You can't just be playing it. No Big Ten team is eligible to be Taco Bell. That's just
yes,
that
100%.
Give me the take that you're thinking about pulling the trigger on next month at SEC Media Days that you're just kind of like sitting there going, man, I just kind of told you mine with whether or not I'm going to have Texas winning a national championship, but there's always that one that you're like, can I go there? Do I have enough juice to be able to make this work? There's probably one that's just kind of trickling around in your mind right now.
Yeah, I think there's two, and I know you want to go rapid fire here, so I'll go. I think Tennessee, if Nico hits the ground running, which is a massive if for a first-year starting quarterback in that conference, I think they could be a playoff team. I think the roster is better than it was last year. I think the weapons are better than it was last year. If Nico is early on who we expect him to be long-term, I think Tennessee's a playoff team. I'm not sure what to make about Auburn. The more I look at them, the more I like their situation. I know Peyton Thorne is still kind of a like, hey, show me something. Show me that I can trust you to be the guy back there pulling the trigger. I think Auburn could be a 9-win football team. I feel better about the Tennessee take than I do the Auburn take, but I think there's a lot of pieces there for Auburn to surprise some folks this year.
How are you doing with your Iamaleava pronunciation?
Dude, we've been working on it for a while here because I'm fortunate to be in a setting in a digital media space where like we have people that specialize in recruiting as well. So I can go and talk to them and be like, hey, Iamaleava. Okay, good. So I feel good about it. Week 1's going to come and be the true test of how we're faring. But I think right now, if we say it a couple times a day and we do it once or twice a show, we'll get the good reps. Feel quality about it right now, but again, we're gonna find out here in week 1.
Tagovailoa and Uiagalelei, I must have said like 10 times per day leading up to their first seasons as starters, just so that I felt confident enough to say it with my chest. I'm at that place with Iamaleava at this point, and that's my biggest win of the offseason as far as I'm concerned.
I think we're all developing like different facial muscles from having to say those names over the course of these last few seasons in college football to where like we're going to have different looking jawlines here, Connor. By the time these guys' careers wrap up, we're going to have said Uiagalelei with Mateo at Oregon, Iamaleava at Tennessee. Like we're going to be, I'm just saying, brother, I think it's going to sharpen the jawline up for everybody.
We earn our paychecks here. That's what we do.
There it is.
That's what we do. Over under 2 more titles for Kirby at Georgia.
Over. I think he recruits so well. Georgia's not going anywhere with what they do on that side of things. And then the culture too, like they have a resume now that speaks for itself to where if you trust the process here, even if you're a 5-star, you go play scout team for a year, maybe you're with the 2s for a season. Like I understand the NIL instant gratification world, but I think Kirby Smart is going to retain more than he loses in terms of what he wants to keep on his roster. I think they're going to be a machine yet again this year. Connor, I know this isn't prediction season just yet, but I'm going to have a hard time picking against Georgia to win it all this year.
Me too. That's why I wanted you to talk me into Texas.
Hey, a Georgia-Texas final, a little rematch action from what we get October 19th. That could be fun.
If they play
little rematch, that'd be a good time.
They could play each other 3 times this year.
How crazy is that, dude?
I'd be here for it. 3 different locations, be able to have that game. That'd be fun. That'd be awesome. Okay, last one for you. What's the biggest sign that someone isn't program worthy? Or rather, let me rephrase that. What's the biggest sign that someone isn't program worthy and is more program worthy?
That's a tremendous question. I think there's a couple of red flags that you look out for. One is that you're okay with the national title game being played on Monday. To me, I feel like that is a layup for most college football fans, that it should be Saturday. And there's people in the comment section that say, okay, go cry about it some more. That's what I'm doing right now. I am doing my best to essentially cry about the game not being on Saturday and being on Monday. I think the other thing is not being program worthy or not being a program guy is like, you just sort of enjoy college football during the season, which is great. And we love you for that. But when you go away from the sport and assume that there's nothing else happening for the entirety of the year, like we're now in a world where we get to talk college football with the transfer portal, with spring football, with fall camp, with with recruiting, like college football being a year-round sport. So if you don't consume it in that sense, we still love you. But to be program, status, I think you got to be a year-rounder.
Not to borrow this too much from Josh Pate, but you say off-season if you're program, and if you are program, there is no off-season.
On the money. Josh Pate, program guy too. So, I mean, there you go. It's one and the same.
Are you Pate State worthy? Has that crossover happened yet?
I think that's probably a question for Josh. I would like to think so, but again, it's not my metric, so I'll leave that for him. But I do appreciate the way that he goes about assessing the Pate State material thing. So I would say I agree with most of his standards when it comes to assessing that kind of material. And, we're going to let him kind of be the judge on that one.
JD, this has been great, man. I really appreciate it. I'm sure I'll see you at SEC Media Days in Dallas next month.
Let's do it. Hey, it's next month. That's crazy. It's already next month. I feel like Michigan just won it all. It's
beautiful, man. When the offseason flies, that's about all we can ask for. Oh, I said offseason. That's program.
I'm with you. I mean, the offseason is a thing. Like, there is a part of the year where they don't play a game. So I'm with you on that. I think there's some wiggle room with that. I'm with you, brother.
Yeah, I'll text Josh and be like, you need to stop getting me into trouble every time I say that word. Yeah, we're good.
Oh, man. Awesome. Thanks again, Connor, for having me on, man. You have a great show, and this is awesome. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
Thanks, man. Means a lot. All right, Will, let's close with some lad of the week. College baseball centric lad of the week that we've got. I'm going with Nick Mingione, the Kentucky coach. The first time ever that Kentucky baseball is going to the College World Series. Last SEC team without a trip to Omaha. That is no more. Mm-hmm. They were able to win that game late Sunday night. My God, why did they start that game at 9:00 Eastern time? That was brutal. But yeah, the job that he did turning that program around, and did so when he probably could have gotten fired a couple years ago. And Mitch Barnhart kind of sticks with him. Instead, consecutive super regional berths. Last year, ran into the buzzsaw that was LSU, understandably so. I went back and looked at kind of like the history of Kentucky baseball in big moments, and it was like, oh yeah, they played the eventual national champion here and the eventual national champion there. So finally ran into a situation where Oregon State wasn't the buzzsaw and Kentucky looks like the buzzsaw. And yeah, this post game, if you saw this, there was this great post game moment where Nick Mingione thanks Mitch Barnhart for basically saying like, look, I had never been a head coach at any level of baseball, not even T-ball. And he gave me this opportunity, and I'm just so grateful for it. And it was just a guy that had great sense of the moment, how big it was for the program, for himself, all those different things. But yeah, he is somebody that worked his way up on that Mississippi State staff, and now Kentucky fans are like, man, what a difference maker he has been. So yeah, it was just an awesome weekend for college baseball as a whole. I'm admittedly not a big time college baseball guy. I don't lock in, especially not during the regular season. I just don't have the time to be able to do it. But yeah, man, it was absolutely crazy. Like the way that things played out for that Florida Clemson game, which I got a feeling you've got a lot of the week that we'll get to from that game. Dabo needs to get Cam Cannarella an offer like ASAP. He should have had an offer by the time he left the field after that catch. That was, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you didn't see this play. It's like Willie Mays, but 2024, and he did so without a warning track. I said it to Lauren at the time. I'm like, that's like one of the best catches I've ever seen, ever. Like any level of baseball is just absolutely insane. But yeah, Peter Burns talked about how it was perhaps the best day of SEC baseball ever, with 5 SEC teams in action in super regionals, all victories, 4 punch tickets to Omaha. We're recording this before the Georgia NC State game. So could be, will be at least 4, as many as 5, but just a wild, entertaining weekend of college baseball. Tennessee losing to Evansville, that game on Saturday, that game was nuts too. Yeah, it was a good time. Very, very fascinating time in the sport of college baseball.
Yes. I mean, so cool to watch teams go to Omaha, which must be nice.
Look, you got to watch your team win it all last year, and to do so in the way that LSU did, with that much star power, I think you
many Jello shots, of course.
All the Jello shots. What is it, 5 years maybe that you are not allowed to complain about?
No, that's facts. I'm getting there, man. I like college baseball better than college basketball. I'm getting there. I think the college basketball has just gotten kind of like, the product has gotten a little bit worse every year. I think that the fact that the SEC selfishly is way better at college baseball, and they have all the future pros, and they have these guys that are special. So yeah, we'll keep it right there. All right, here goes our favorite segment. We'll be nice to Florida. So Florida, you got to really admire their BDE, going into Clemson wearing orange, winning a just absolute, like, whatever the Iditarod, whatever event you could imagine that is long and grueling, a 5-hour, 4-minute game. I mean, I would rather, that's like hiking up Everest in baseball terms. You got random freshman relievers coming in. Coaches are just sweating profusely. The colors, like, the angles are weird. I don't know what was going on. It was so confusing. Yeah. It's so hard to find stats in college baseball. You're Googling guys, trying to figure out what's going on. This is why we fell in love with sports right here. I'm finding this magic that I found as a child, listening to jocks, trying to figure out guys' names on the AOL internet. This is exactly how I feel watching college baseball. And my lad of the week is Michael Robertson. Now, this is a guy who, we always talk about, we love college sports because it feels like more than in the pros, these guys are called upon to do the extraordinary. These guys that are college-age kids, 19-year-old going to math class, and it's like, you got to win this game for your team. And Florida was obviously already in a good position because they played so well, right? They're already up 1-0. They were beating Clemson, who was hosting the regional. But to be called up in that moment as a guy who's a redshirt sophomore, who is more like kind of a defensive specialist, not known for his bat, kind of back of the order subtype guy. And Florida has these stars, right? Like, you've seen all the stars at Florida, even over the years, the pitching, the home runs. They're a team that was always talked about, well, the record's not great, but their talent is there. This is not one of the guys they talked about, right? This is not one of the guys that's on, the newscast. And that's what's so beautiful about college sports. That's why I love college baseball, because it's just so raw. It's like, they're not doing this for the gram. They're not doing this for the, they're doing it for their teammates. I think that's super cool. I hate to sound like a boomer. I love the rule that you got to stay in college whenever you commit to going to college, even if you have a great freshman season. And so, point being, like, I just want to give Michael Robertson his flowers. Said this super clutch hit, and the final score, 11-10 for the Gators. This is a game I was trying to watch in the airport and, like, looking like a madman in Chicago. Just like, can you guys please put on this college baseball game? And you can see, Chicago, right? They barely care about Northwestern as much as Northwestern to tell you. They're going from like a Yankees game or whatever to this angle of, like, everyone's looking at me like, what are you watching? Are you a degenerate gambler? I'm like, no, guys, this game is in like the 10th. Hey, we got to watch this. And so, point being, we had the airport bar locked in. So super duper cool to see, Florida silence the doubters. Love it when they do that. And so you got to give them credit, man. I mean, this is a team that has taken their lumps. They're a team that has gone through the ups and downs, and it was supposed to be Clemson's storybook day. You talked about, the catch. There was also, numerous home runs. It's felt like Clemson's season has been this roller coaster that's felt like a storybook, kind of like LSU last year. But Florida just snuffed that out, and they were not the host. They were in Clemson. The odds were stacked against them. Everybody was saying they didn't belong there. And just like sports often do, they delivered in the most improbable way. I think that was it was a game of the year. It was one of the SEC games of the year. Just super duper cool the way that Florida represented the conference the other day.
The game was bananas. It was absolutely bananas. 3-run homer to tie it in the ninth. So kept having to remind yourself over and over, oh yeah, Clemson isn't the home team, despite the fact that it's hosting the Super Regional. Yep. I hate that college baseball does it. If you're hosting something, you should be the home team every single time. I don't care that they switch off, and technically they get to be the home team more times than not. I don't care. They should be the home team every single time. Florida having
I would change that. I think that favors the favored teams. Because of the game 3, I think Clemson would have been the home team. So I think
Right,
you got
that's
to
what
give
I'm saying.
something. I think you got to give something
No.
to these away teams. They're already playing in
No.
Clemson, South Carolina. They don't got no fans in Clemson, South Carolina.
Be better in the regular season then. That's baseball is so, but that's the thing though, is like baseball is so random.
Yeah.
And like the level of variance is just not that significant. So yeah, I mean, I think that the home team has deserved that advantage every single time. But it was weird seeing Florida celebrate a walk-off winner at Clemson. It was like hitting a game-winning shot when you're, on the road team in basketball or something like that. Just something that you just do not see very often. That game was absolutely bonkers. If you don't like college baseball, or even if you're very much a casual like myself, that was the type of game that you tune into and you're just like talking to your buddies about today. It was that crazy. So good choice. Very, very good choice. We have tons of college baseball coverage, SaturdayDownSouth.com right now. We're going to have lots and lots of college baseball coverage leading up to Omaha, where the SEC will have such significant representation. So be on the lookout for that. If you have not, leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. That's Saturday Down South on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at SatDownSouth, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.